George really wanted to talk about trains in his not a blog post, but thankfully, since he knows that we want to hear about Game of Thrones / Winds of Winter, he threw in one sentence about both. Classic George. So George bought a trains with some friends, and starting December 3rd, they actually begin running. You can buy a ticket to ride on them. He's planning on theming them like Christmas, murder mysteries, Valentine's Day stuff, and so on. But I know you really don't care about trains and the fact that George now owns 2 trains. Actually, if you look at it, one's a wolf and the other one's a dragon themed, and it's pretty cool. But on the trains, if you're worried that, he was working on it, he assured that he did no work on the trains. He simply wrote checks for stuff to be done on the train, and that he actually is working on Winds of Winter, along with a million other things. Classic George. Okay, so George took to his website, he wrote about his trains, but I'm only going to read the part where he talks about Winds of Winter / Game of Thrones. So I'm going to do my best George voice that none of you ever mock me about, because you're all very wonderful grandchildren. I love you all. Tell your parents Grandma Roar said hi. Okay. Here's what George wrote. I have been writing Winds of Winter, editing 3 new wildcard books, sitting down with some amazing screenwriters and showrunners to create 317 new Game of Thrones successor shows for HBO and HBO Max. Okay, I just want to start with the I've been writing Winds of Winter line, or words within that very long sentence. That means nothing. That could mean he wrote a couple words, a sentence. It could mean he deleted a chapter, which he's sadly done before. He's decided that he really just entirely hates this storyline or this character or whatnot. Or, it could mean he wrote 5 chapters and he's really close to publishing it. You don't know. George is always saying, I'm writing Winds of Winter. So don't get any sort of hope up. Don't feel any sort of positive emotion. But at the same time, don't feel any sort of negative emotion either. Honestly, it's best for your sanity just to remain neutral, because regardless if you scream at an elderly man or give him death threats, I've seen hundreds at this point over the years of talking about George. He's an elderly man, guys. Come on. But what I think is really exciting is the fact that he said that he is working with writers, he's working with people on 317 Game of Thrones successor shows. And I know he doesn't actually mean 317. I mean, maybe. And HBO kind of is a hit or miss with fucking up things, so maybe they are doing that. And in case you aren't familiar, we do know we have 6 spin-off Game of Thrones shows in the works. The flea bottom one has been canceled. So we have one about the sea snake Corlys Velaryon and his epic adventures, one about Nymeria and her 10,000 ships, one about Duncan Egg, House of the Dragon, of course we all know about that, and then an animated series. Oh, there's also Attorney at Harrenhal play, which I'm just imagining is going to be really, really cool. And if you're wondering how much involvement George has with these spin-off shows, we were told by Ryan Condal, who is a showrunner for House of the Dragon, that George is very, very generous with his time, and that it's easy for him to reach him by phone, whether that's a phone call or just text back and forth. So when George says that he is working with these people, it could be a varying degree, but he does make himself available to talk about lore and how things fit in and changes and whether he approves them and all of that, which I know bums people out because they're thinking, okay, so he's spending more time away from Winds of Winter with these projects. But on the positive side, I know I told you not to feel any positive emotions. Let's feel a little positivity. It means that we're gonna have successor shows that are closer to lore and the world of ice and fire. So accurate representation, I think, is great, even if it means, he's not spending as much time on Winds of Winter. And it's interesting that he talks about working on 300 plus successor shows, because there was recently a question of, is HBO doing a Game of Thrones cinematic universe? And we're being told that House of the Dragon is basically their Iron Man movie if we're thinking about the MCU cinematic universe, which I would think the main show would be your Iron Man, which would mean, oh gosh, what would House of the Dragon be? One of the Captain America movies? I love all of them. So yeah, they're saying, oh, okay, House of the Dragon is kicking the franchise off. It's really not. Did you forget about the main show? Come on. The main show is your Robert Downey Jr. If Robert Downey Jr. shit the bed in his last movies. So 6 spin-off shows right now. We could be getting a lot more. It kind of seems like to me, because if you read the other parts of his Not a Blog, he talks about how he's working on a ton of projects, even being an executive producer on quite a few. So it sounds like George is going back to his TV film roots instead of working on writing as much. And that is a passion of his. If you go back and look at his career, it is. So I think George, in his last years of his life, in the winter of his life, is going back to doing what he truly loves. I'm sure he's still writing, he's still working on wins, but it's not the same passion. I have a feeling that's more like a job to him, and doing all these film projects, they're a passion for him. And I guess if I was his age and I could die at any moment at this point, I mean, we all could, but, you know, obviously his age and his health and all that, you know, he probably doesn't have a lot of years left. I would want to spend it doing what makes me happy, so I really can't fault him for that. And if doing TV, film stuff is just his jam and what he wants to do to feel fulfilled and kind of close out his career, cool, George. I mean, it's your life. I'm not in control of you. And if I was in your same shoes and I had a ton of money and I was at the end of my life, I would definitely be doing what I wanted to do instead of what I think other people would want me to do. All of that being said, I think it's crazy that he bought 2 trains with friends and that they are going to start running December 3rd, and it's crazy that he is able to juggle, okay, I'm helping with all these Game of Thrones successor shows, I'm making myself available, but I'm also working on releasing these books. Not Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire, wild cards and the like. Oh, I'm working on all these different projects, these TV shows and such, so it's a lot. I have a hard time focusing on a few things at a time, and it seems like he has just dozens of things to focus on. So that might mean we're never getting Wins of Winter, but I feel like some of you have already come to that conclusion. So guess what successor shows that haven't been announced that we are probably getting. I would love something in Sithorios. I would lose my mind, and me more like crazier stuff in Far East Essos would be a lot of fun. I know we're gonna get that with the Sea Snake spinoff series, but I can deal with more. Yeah, like, subscribe, let me know what you think about the spinoff shows, Winds of Winter. How much do you love George?